Dear colleagues, in this screencast I would like to address challenges and successes of doing multicenter research, and for this I'm using the case of the Approach IS study. I'm giving this screencast on behalf of the steering committee of the Approach IS project. Approach IS stands for Assessment of Patterns of Patient-Reported Outcomes in Adults with Congenital Heart Disease International Study. And the aims of this project are twofold. First, what are the differences in patient-reported outcomes of adults with congenital heart disease who are living in different areas of the world? And second, how can these differences be understood? And this is how Approach IS looks like. It's a cross-sectional survey in 24 participating centers from 15 different countries all over the world. And here you see the map where the centers in the different countries are located. The methods that we used in this cross-sectional survey was mail-based or hospital-based surveys. This means that we developed a set of questionnaires, self-report questionnaires, and these questionnaires were handed over to patients either in the hospital during a scheduled outpatient clinic or was sent to the patients by mail. Patients could be included in this study if they were diagnosed with a congenital heart disease from the wide spectrum, being either a mild, moderate, or complex condition. When patients were 18 years or older, diagnosed with a congenital heart disease before adolescence, which means before the age of 10, in follow-up in an adult congenital heart disease center, and having the physical, cognitive, and language abilities to complete self-report questionnaires. The primary outcomes in this project were self-reported health by using the SF12 and the EQ5D, psychosocial functioning by measuring anxiety and depression using the HADS, behavioral outcomes using the Health Behavior Scale Congenital Heart Disease, and quality of life by using a linear analog scale and a satisfaction with life scale. Secondary outcomes, these were the outcomes that were potentially explaining differences across samples. Explanatory variables were sense of coherence by using the 13-item version of the sense of coherence scale, illness perceptions using the brief IPQ, and demographic variables including religion, patient-based New York Heart Association classification, work situation, etc. And finally, medical variables being cardiac surgeries, catheter interventions, having cardiac device, cardiac missions, and so on. Since this was an international study, which was not funded, so to speak, this means that every center was responsible for the local cost. And central cost, we as coordinating center at the University of Leuven, we could take up some central cost. This means that we paid for the license fees for the use of the questionnaires from all over the world. We provided statistical support, and we took up the working cost as a coordinating center. So we had the international coordinator who was running the project. This was paid by University of Leuven. But indeed, like I said, each participating center had to take care of the local cost. And local costs were stationary costs like paper, envelopes, photocopying, postage, local data management, etc. The study was endorsed and facilitated by ISACT, and ISACT is the International Society for Adult Congenital Heart Disease. The target was that we could recruit 200 patients in each participating center. But we knew from the beginning that this would be difficult for certain centers to reach that number of patients. And therefore, we said we have 24 centers participating in the study. So if we can have an overall target of 3,500 or 4,000 patients, then this project can be considered to be successful. And look what happened. Over a period of somewhat more than 1.5 years, we included more than 4,000 patients, which means that we exceeded the upper level of the overall target in this project. So, in terms of sample size, this was already successful. We concluded the data collection and data entry at the end of February 2015, and like I said, more than 4,000 patients have been included. We have full data on 4,028 patients. And this is the list of countries where these patients come from. You can see that most patients are coming from the United States, followed by Canada and by Sweden. And not coincidentally, these are the 3 countries in which more than one center was participating in the study. Switzerland was this in Bern in Switzerland was the center which included most patients on their own. So they included 278 patients only in that one center, and can therefore be considered to be the top recruiter in this project. Shortly after the start of the project, we developed a publication strategy. Doing so, we first established a publication committee, and in this committee it was decided that we would make 2 main papers from this project. One paper is the methods paper, where we describe the rationale, design and the methods of the study. Second is an international comparison of quality of life worldwide. We agreed that each center could provide one researcher as a co-author on these main publications. From the beginning, we also decided that the participating centers remained the rightful owner of the local data. We thought that this was important so that people still have the feeling that they own their own data. And separate publications on sub-studies or on local data are possible, but only after acceptance of the main paper, because we wanted to avoid that sub-studies were published in the literature before we could publish the main results from the paper. What were challenges that we faced in undertaking this project? First, we did not have dedicated funding. So this means that all participating centers voluntarily participated. And this is a challenge to a certain extent. We wanted to have participation from all continents, and we were pretty successful except for Africa. I still regret that we were not able to mobilize funds and people in Africa to allow them to participate in this project. Since it is an international study, we needed the questionnaires in the different languages, and we needed to pay for the licensing fees for these questionnaires in the different languages as well. So at the end, in terms of licensing fees, it was a pretty big budget that we had to take up centrally. The feasibility to include enough patients. Certain centers were really wondering if they would be able to recruit enough patients, if they would be able to recruit the 200 patients that we set as a target from the beginning. Not all centers had experience with patient-reported outcomes research. Certain centers did not have experience with research at all, or do not have a research infrastructure at all. Other centers are well established in terms of medical research, but do not have experience in terms of patient-reported outcomes research. And this is something you should bear in mind, because this requires a specific supportive system to support and to make sure that people can do this study in an appropriate way. Administrative issues. Certain centers did not want or could not participate in this project without having a contract with us as the central coordinating center. So we need to overcome this. We needed to make contracts between the University of Leuven and the participating centers. Data entry in a secure database, of course, the data had to come to Leuven for data management and data analysis, but how can we bring them to us? Well, certain centers really were wondering how we could assure and guarantee that we could do this in a secured way. And therefore, we developed two data entry systems which were secured, and we developed a system of a secure database which is saved on a secured server. What are the keys to success? Well, first, it was endorsed by, and the study was conducted in collaboration with ISEC, the International Society of Adult Congenital Heart Disease. And this was very important to us because this society provided a platform, a forum where we could communicate about this study, where we could use the network of the society to find potentially participating centers. So the network of ISEC and the collaboration with ISEC was of critical importance. The basic principle we started from was that everyone that participates should be benefit from participation. And this can be done in terms of publication, but this also can be done in terms of building up research capacity and being involved in multicenter research. Another key to success is having a great international coordinator, and we were happy to have Silke Apers on board. Silke Apers is one of my PhD fellows, and she is really stellar. She did a great job in bringing all these centers together to keep the pace in the project, and you really need someone like Silke. The feeling of belonging, that's also a very important thing. A while ago, one of the participating centers, the cardiologist there, said to me, well, I wanted to be part of Approach IS. I don't know why, I cannot explain, but I just wanted to be part of it. And this shows that this kind of feeling of belonging is important for people to participate in such a huge endeavor in a voluntary way. Methods to increase this feeling of belonging was the development of a website. Here you see the link, and I invite you to have a look at it. In this website, we also presented all the participating centers. And we had these monthly info flashes in which we had a center in the spotlight. So every month we provided brief information, new developments, an update on the project. And in this info flash, like you see here in the middle of this poster, in the middle of this info flash, there you see one center in the spotlight, and the next month it was another center. We provided regular updates on recruitment, and this is very important to increase and maintain the motivation of the people for data collection. We wanted to build a formal consortium and a kind of branding. And branding, I mean, it's important to have an acronym, a name for the project, to have a logo for the project, so that everyone can identify the project as such and can identify themselves with the project. And finally, we allowed to have piggyback studies, which means that we provided a list of core variables that had to be included, but certain centers decided to add some questionnaires as a piggyback, so to speak. So they can do sub-analysis, sub-studies later on based on extra variables that they have collected. There are centers that decided to start with a longitudinal study. So the first wave, the first measurement point, was used for Approach IS, but then subsequently other measurements were undertaken. What are the successes so far? Well, we were able to include 15 countries, which was great and which exceeded our expectations. We had more than 4,000 patients enrolled. I can say that this is also a success factor, a success element. And the methods paper has been published in the International Journal of Cardiology, and I also invite you to read this paper because it really and nicely details how the study is built up and why we made certain choices. Further planning, the data analysis on the main paper on quality of life worldwide has been performed, and the main paper is in progress. So we hope to finish this up shortly, and probably before the end of 2015 this paper can be in press. Sub-studies are planned in according with ideas generated by the participating centers. Indeed, we provided the possibility to all the participants to raise ideas, to propose ideas for sub-studies that can be undertaken after the main paper is accepted. And indeed, we got 28 ideas. 10 sub-studies are planned on local data, and 18 collaborative sub-studies are planned. Sub-studies on specific patient-reported outcomes, sub-studies on the relationship between patient-reported outcomes and medical variables, sub-studies on relationship between patient-reported outcomes and demographic variables, and sub-studies on regional differences. I hope this gave you an idea about how Approach IS was conducted and what the challenges were that we were facing and what the keys to success were, and that this may be an inspiration for you when you are planning or conducting multi-center research. Thank you very much.